Introduce yourself, name, state, and also one question.
Yes, just one question. First, good evening, sir. Thank you so much for bringing governance as the center point in our discussion. You've mentioned so much about sustainability and the development goals, the indicators around that, and how we can measure equitable development. I just had one specific question that we're seeing a lot of government hoardings which talk about how much they have delivered in terms of schemes, how much entitlements they have delivered, but we don't know out of how much. How many of those are really the people who really need it? How inclusive, as you said, is it? So I just wanted to quickly understand how much is the Tamil Nadu state using data for evidence, and are you partnering with civil society organizations? Sorry, I did not introduce myself. My name is Prajakta. I'm from Pune, and I work for an organization called Hak Darshak. And I specifically wanted to know if there is a way for us to collaborate with Tamil Nadu government in terms of data integration, because we're collecting a lot of grassroots data on citizens and the socio-economic factors and what schemes that they are entitled to. So yeah, one last question there. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think the old adage that you can't improve or understand what you don't measure applies very, very clearly. As I say to a lot of my colleagues, there's a reason stuff is in the textbooks. It's been proven right, multiple times. That's why it's in the textbook. So data is crucial, and again, most governments are not designed. Actually, I take that back. The Constitution was very high foresight, designed a pretty good system at the union level, not so much at the state level. Unfortunately, at the union level, it once used to be the pride of the country, but now, for various reasons, I don't want to seem like I'm descending into politics. But the net result is that we don't do a lot of data gathering. In fact, in many cases, data has been suppressed. So we don't really know what's happening. In some cases, so much so that we have had to step up to the plate and start doing additional data collection ourselves to overcome the lack of data that used to be supplied to us before from the union level. But data is a bit of a tricky thing. Right? I mean, first, to understand what it is you need is not a trivial thing. Second, to get some level of purity is quite hard. And then, because of the scale of our country, you can only do sampling. You can't do. It's very hard to do universal data. At least used to be. Thankfully, I think the technology is getting so good, and we've gone from kind of, when I was a PhD student in psychology, the rule was that unless you have a hypothesis based on existing theory and, kind of extension, anything you find statistically is irrelevant. It's just random. It's no longer cause and effect unless you asked for it first. But now, in the advent of big data, you're capturing more data than you ever thought possible, and you can start deciphering patterns and outcomes that, if not quite cause and effect relationship, at least give you grounds to dig a bit further and get better insight. Well, now with all the kind of deep tech and the IoT and all that, you can collect data so many ways in so many places. I think we are only in the nascent stages, at least as a state government. We have stepped up a lot. In the last 6 months, we have probably, 20 or 30 people dedicated to doing nothing but data. We call it the Data Purity Project. We're just integrating all the data from all the different sources. And it has been immensely helpful to us. We found, for example, tens of thousands of people being given old age pensions who were listed in the civil register as expired. And we know the civil register is less than comprehensive or accurate, particularly after COVID. There's a big gap between true fatalities and when they appear in the civil register. And that's in a state like Tamil Nadu. Were I to go to a less developed state, that gap is even wider. When we cross-referenced the loan data from multiple cooperative societies, we found almost 65% of all the loans that we thought were eligible for waiver were actually not. We found fraud of enormous proportion. So I think data is the key, right? As I think the Economist magazine or some like in the last 3-4 years, they recovered. So data is the new oil. There's that much value in it. We collect some, we need to collect a lot more. Some of it also starts to verge on intrusions into the lives of people in ways the state should not. So, for example, yesterday I was in Madurai, I couldn't make it, I had some other commitments, but my economic advisor and friend Rajan is in Chennai, and he spoke at an event yesterday. And he said there are some things the RBI just should not be able to see, in his opinion, because it's just too much intrusion into people's lives. So I think it's a balance. Of course, we are happy to collaborate with whoever. Collaboration. What's the difference between collaboration and getting it independently? If I get it independently at some level, I have greater comfort that it hasn't been skewed or rigged or biased by government interference. If I collaborate, it probably makes it a bit easier for you to get the data rather than do it yourself. Not just funding, but opening doors and preventing problems and so forth. It's a fine balance. So I think, case by case, we make that decision.
Hello, sir. Jaideep. My name is Aruna Singh. I'm from Telangana. I'm working as a research associate. I'm doing a project on transgender community, and I'm working with Bahujan Samaj Party in Hyderabad and Telangana. My question is, how to improve citizens' quality of life, and what is your government plans on educational system and health department? Thank you, sir.
Yeah, listen, I'm not the chief minister, I'm not the party chief. I have some constraints. But 2016 was the centenary year of the Justice Party, so the SILF's formation. It was formed November 20th, 1960. So just out of my own interest, I wrote an article, and then the then party president, Kalingir, he liked it so much that he published it on the front page of the Murasuli, and then which is our party newspaper, and then had almost all the people who spoke at the centenary celebration, which our current chief minister organized, referenced that article. But in that article, I said, because of my unique history, because I'm the fourth generation of my family in the movement, and because at least some of my forefathers left behind a lot of paperwork, a lot of writings, a lot of coverage in the press and all that, I said, if you look back to where we started, some things we have done reasonably well. We have improved a lot of the average citizen, all the statistics I cited. We have improved the social equity for the backward classes. We have done far less for the oppressed classes. Better than zero, but still a long way to go. But maybe if we compare that to the economic outcomes, those have not been so good. We have achieved a lot more on the social dimension, imperfect as that may be. But people's lives have not improved that much. If you compare us to like the really, good case studies, either a small state like Singapore that did 100x per capita in 50 years, or you take a big country like China that did, 10x or 15x or 20x in 20 years, 30 years, then we have not done that much. Now, that's a broader India problem. It's not only a Tamilnadu problem. But I had proposed back then, this is November of 2016, I said maybe one of our goals should be to provide people, restate our goals. It's not just about social justice, but it's about a life of dignity. And a life of dignity means that, you open the tap in your house and you get water. Everybody has a roof over their head, some minimum per person square foot house. You have a toilet with, flushing facilities. You live in a place that's free of garbage outside on the streets or open sewers. What an advanced country considers kind of a baseline, a life of dignity. I didn't talk about rich, poor, washing machine, all that. I just said a life of dignity, which really goes down to the basics, right? It's not just about food, clothing, shelter. It's about hygiene. It's about clean environment. It's about access to private toilets. It's about safe roads and streets. Those kinds of things. And I put a disclaimer, and I listed 4 or 5 things, and I put a disclaimer, and I said, for a guy who came to politics 6 months ago, which is what I did, I was gone for 30 years overseas, and I came back and ran for election almost immediately. So I said, for a guy who came to politics in April, November, I'm not qualified to say what the party's role should be, but these are just suggestions for debate. So I agree. I think, we should set ourselves some benchmark because growth is too broad a notion. You can achieve mathematical outcomes many ways, and even inclusive growth is still a concept. It's not concrete. So I, for one, would say that we should set ourselves some kinds of concrete goals about where the lowest common denominator is. Only then we know that we've really lifted the bottom of the pyramid. But I'm not that senior in the party.